My sibling's pregnancy with my fiancée triggered a family feud, leading me to sever ties with them. From a young age, everyone in our family knew who the favored child was, though this wasn't openly discussed. It was apparent in every aspect of our lives. The favorite, undeniably, wasn't me. Now at 32, my younger brother Mike is 29, but the dynamic within our family has remained unchanged since childhood. The disparity in treatment was readily discernible. If Mike broke something, like when he shattered our mother's prized vase, the blame invariably fell on me. "You're the older brother," they'd say. "You should have stopped him." But I wasn't even in the room when the vase broke. This didn't matter. Mike was too young to understand the consequences of his actions, so the responsibility always landed on me. Whenever we achieved something, his successes always seemed magnified. I recall winning a math competition in 5th grade. My mother merely said, "Congratulations," quickly returning to dinner preparation. But when Mike received a participation certificate for a soccer tournament, a celebratory dinner was organized, complete with friends invited. "You won't be upset, right?" she asked. Mike's efforts were always justified by the excuse of youth. He was younger, more sensitive, faced more challenges, and I, being the older sibling, was expected to understand. This pattern persisted into adulthood. When I secured admission to a prestigious university with a scholarship, my parents barely reacted. They didn't bother to visit my dorm or offer assistance with the move. I vividly recall arranging everything on my own, taking the bus and feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. It felt like nothing I did mattered to them. However, Mike's entrance into a local community college was a different story. A party was thrown, guests were invited, and he even received a car as a gift. He'd worked hard for it. My father told me, "No one gave you a car. You biked 5 kilometers to work each day, saving every penny to buy your books." Mike dropped out of college in his first semester, and no one seemed disappointed. "Don't worry, dear," my mother said. "You just need time to find your path." Following this, they started funding all his entrepreneurial endeavors. He opened a virtual store that failed within 3 months. He tried creating an app, but didn't complete the project. Finally, he started selling sports equipment. Another failure. I observed as my parents poured thousands of reais into these ill-fated ventures. One day, I questioned their continued support. My mother merely gestured dismissively, as if it were obvious. "Mike hasn't found himself yet," she said. "He has so much talent. We need to help him discover it." But I never received that kind of support. I paid for my own education, worked after classes, and when I asked for a helping hand, I heard the same old refrain. "You're independent. That's great for you. It will make you stronger." I wished I could say this didn't affect me, but it did. No matter how hard I tried, I always felt inadequate, as if I was never good enough. Not for them, perhaps not for anyone. This disparity in treatment left scars, causing me to doubt my worth and question if I'd ever feel adequate. This is when Sarah entered my life. We met at a friend's party. Mike almost didn't go. Exhaustion from work weighed heavily on him. However, Mike persisted, urging him to relax, assuring him that there would be pleasant company. Sarah immediately captivated him with a natural charisma that illuminated any room. She was laughing at some light-hearted anecdote, and her infectious mirth drew a smile from him, inexplicably. They began conversing near the beverage table. Sarah inquired if he was Mike's friend. He replied that he was Mike's older brother. "Interesting," she murmured, a hint of a sidelong smile gracing her lips. "Mike never mentioned you. Why are you hiding?" The conversation flowed effortlessly, yet held a depth that surprised him. In a single hour, he felt more connected to her than he had to anyone in months. Sarah possessed a remarkable gift. She made one feel seen and heard. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly understood. Their relationship blossomed, becoming the best decision he'd made. With her, everything seemed effortless and natural. She supported him, celebrated his accomplishments, and for the first time, he felt valued. Not for what he did, but for who he was. A year later, they decided to move in together. A significant step, yet he felt certain of their bond. They created a cozy world within their apartment, shared late-night movie marathons, engaged in deep conversations in the kitchen, and formulated future plans together. These were the finest years of his life. On their anniversary, he decided to take the next step. He had been diligently saving for months, planning to purchase an engagement ring. He knew she would adore it, a platinum band with a small, elegant diamond, reflecting her refined taste. That night, he felt a tremor of anxiety as he proposed. They were walking in the park, the very spot where they had shared their first kiss. He knelt. Sarah brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. For the first time, everything felt perfectly aligned. They opted against rushing the wedding. They wanted to meticulously plan it in their own style, without debt or loans, relying solely on their combined resources. They worked diligently, forgoing vacations, and pouring all their savings into their shared future. When they announced their engagement, he anticipated familial joy. He had always heard his family lament that he needed to find a good woman. However, their response was far from joyous. His mother forced a smile and declared, "Well, congratulations, I suppose." "I hope it works out," his father mumbled. "Good luck with that." Mike stood in a corner, a strange smile playing on his face. It wasn't happiness, rather a predatory quality, as if he had spotted an opportunity. Subsequently, Mike's interest in their relationship intensified. He fabricated excuses to speak to Sarah, posed perplexing questions, and made remarks that piqued his suspicion. "You're lucky," Mike would often say. "Not everyone can handle someone so serious. Or perhaps you could have found someone better. But hey, if you're happy, then..." Sarah would laugh it off, dismissing them as silly jokes. He tried to ignore Mike's comments, but every word sent shivers down his spine. At the time, he believed Mike was simply acting childish. Now he recognizes that this marked the beginning of something far more sinister. 4 months before the wedding, subtle changes began to manifest in Sarah. Her cheerful, optimistic demeanor had waned. She was distant, apprehensive, and her altered behavior alarmed him. This transformation stemmed from her phone. Her actions became increasingly erratic, and whenever I entered a room, she'd obscure the screen or conceal something. "What are you talking about so much with someone?" I asked one day. "Work things," she replied, not even looking at me. I yearned to trust her, but doubt gnawed at me. Each late arrival intensified my suspicions. Her excuses felt poorly rehearsed. I'd stay late at the office, but a faint scent of wine and a male cologne, neither hers nor mine, lingered in the air. I tried to convince myself that it was just stress. We were working excessively hard to save for the wedding. I reasoned that her behavior might be a side effect of the intense pressure, but deep down, I knew something was amiss. A month after the changes began, another sign surfaced. Sarah exhibited a different radiance, smiling more often, but her appetite had also noticeably shifted. It took me several weeks to piece together the puzzle, but when the truth clicked, a wave of happiness washed over me. Sarah was pregnant. I saw it as a sign that our future was perfectly aligned. I didn't confide in her that I had already understood. I wanted to honor her moment of disclosure. But when, one evening, she sat beside me, I knew the news was about to explode. Her eyes brimming with tears, her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles were white, she began, "I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled as she spoke. My heart stopped. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. And then, after an eternity of silence, she finished, "But the baby isn't yours." The words struck me like a physical blow. I heard her, but couldn't process the information. It was as if the ground had fallen away from beneath my feet. "What do you mean?" I asked, even as I already knew the answer. Sarah, her voice choked with sobs and guilt, began to explain. The baby, she revealed, was Mike's. I could only grasp fragments of her account. She described how it all began at the engagement party. While I was engrossed in conversation with guests, Mike had cornered Sarah. He'd suggested she was making a mistake marrying me, that I didn't appreciate her, and that she deserved more. "You don't value me," he'd allegedly said. She cried, telling me that he understood her in a way I never could. He had preyed on her insecurities, fueling her doubts until she believed him. He'd promised her the world. He'd said that I could never provide the attention, love, and life she deserved. I was an idiot, she confessed. I don't know why I believed him. My rage, betrayal, and shock overwhelmed me. I couldn't bear to listen any further. I stood up and said, "Gather your things and leave." She sat there for a moment, attempting to speak, but I wasn't listening anymore. After she departed, I called Mike. He answered immediately, as if he had been expecting my call. "What did you do?" I roared. Initially, he tried to downplay the situation, claiming it was a drunken mistake, a one-time occurrence that meant nothing. But as I pressed him, his tone shifted. "Maybe if you were a better fiancé, this wouldn't have happened." The words stung. I felt my blood boil. Unthinkingly, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to his house. When I arrived, I found my parents waiting outside. My mother with arms crossed, my father with a weary sigh, as if the mere prospect of the conversation exhausted him. "We need to talk," my mother declared, her familiar lecturing tone instantly filling the air. Before I could utter a word, she launched into her sermon. Mike had confessed everything, she said. He didn't want this to happen. Sarah had seduced him. I stammered, "She seduced him?" My mother repeated it, as if that explained everything. "He was a victim," she insisted. My brother, the architect of my devastation, was now inexplicably a victim. "It's not his fault," my father chimed in. "You know how sensitive he is about these things." I stared at them, utterly incredulous. They were listening to each other, not me. He was my brother, not a child. He knew exactly what he was doing. I cried out, but they had already made up their minds. My parents viewed Mike as innocent, demanding that I forgive him. "Family is paramount," my mother declared, her voice brimming with self-righteousness. "You cannot let this destroy our family." Then came the final blow, the words that shattered me. "You need to support Sarah and the baby. She's pregnant. It's your responsibility to help her in this moment." My breath hitched. Rage surged through me. "This child is not mine," I practically yelled. After everything they did, I owed them nothing. My mother was affronted, as though I'd uttered some unspeakable absurdity. "You're being too harsh," she stated. "We all make mistakes. You're the older brother. You need to set an example, support them." The twisted logic stunned me. I couldn't respond. In the following days, their relentless pursuit of my forgiveness continued. My mother texted, "We're waiting for you to come to your senses. Mike is heartbroken. He didn't mean to hurt you." My father called, saying, "Everyone makes mistakes. It's normal in families. Talk to him." Worst of all, the rest of the family became involved. Uncles and aunts called, uninformed but opinionated. "You have to forgive your brother," they urged. "This is just family drama. Everyone goes through it." "She's pregnant," a cousin stated. "The baby is innocent. Think about the future." It seemed that no one understood or wanted to understand that I had been betrayed by the two people I trusted most, my brother and my fiancée. They had shattered everything, and my entire family had decided that the problem was me. "You're destroying this family?" my mother screamed one day when I refused to speak with Mike and Sarah. "You're not giving them a chance to fix things." All hope of them ever seeing their wrongness vanished. After listening to my parents demanding that I forgive Mike and support Sarah, I realized that I could no longer maintain contact. Each interaction left me more resentful and heartbroken. I made the agonizing decision to sever ties with them all. The first step was changing my phone number. I didn't want the constant calls and texts filled with blame. I moved out of the apartment I shared with Sarah and found a new place. I began therapy. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't face this turmoil alone. However, my family didn't get the message. Initially, they tried calling from unknown numbers. When that failed, they started appearing near my new home. One day, I saw my mother standing in a car across the street, staring at my window as if awaiting my appearance. I called the police, but she left before they arrived. When they realized I was evading them, their approach escalated. Later, during my lunch break, I saw my mother and Mike in the parking lot near my car, waving and trying to get my attention. As I approached, my mother cried out, "You can't ignore us. We are your family. You are our family." I tried to walk past, but she blocked my way. "Your brother and his son need you. How can you be so callous?" I stopped, took a deep breath, and spoke as calmly as I could. "This isn't my child. I owe you nothing. Please leave." That's when Mike lost his composure. "You're acting like a child," he yelled. "Just because someone is better than you, you've always been a failure." I clenched my fists but didn't respond. I turned and walked back to my office while they continued to shout, drawing attention from everyone around. But the ordeal didn't end there. A few days later, a coworker approached me with a worried expression. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Your mother came here," she said, "saying you're refusing to help the family." I was stunned. I learned my mother had visited my workplace, recounting stories of my abandonment and showcasing pictures of Mike and Sarah to my colleagues. "He's neglecting his responsibilities," she told one. "His brother is going through a difficult time." Her words painted a picture of my abandonment, and their attempts to depict me as insensitive were humiliating. They were trying to destroy my reputation, attempting to guilt-trip me into submission. I realized then that I couldn't continue in this manner. The following day, I directly approached my company's human resources department and explained everything. My supervisor was understanding and even suggested increasing security to prevent future encounters. However, this wasn't enough. I filed an order of protection against Mike and my parents. Predictably, their response mirrored my expectations. My mother contacted mutual friends and relatives, spreading the message that I was unbalanced and exaggerating the situation. They even hired an expensive attorney to challenge the order in court. They tried to portray it as a simple family squabble. "We just want to talk to our son," my mother pleaded with the judge, weeping. "We are his family." But I had evidence. I presented messages threatening me and videos of the parking lot incident. The judge didn't fall for it. The order of protection remained valid. It was a relief, but not quite a victory. I knew my parents and Mike wouldn't stop trying to disrupt my peace. I hoped things would calm down after the order was granted. I started to regain a routine. I returned to work, spent time with friends, and even resumed my gym routine. Exercise became my refuge, a way to alleviate the lingering stress. I'd put on my headphones, play my favorite playlist, and focus on my workouts. But one evening, this newfound peace shattered. It was an ordinary day. I had just warmed up and was about to begin bench pressing when I saw a familiar face in the mirror. Mike. He stood at the door with that smug, self-satisfied smile that had always infuriated me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The order of protection clearly stated he wouldn't leave me alone. I tried to focus on my workout, hoping he'd disappear, but instead he pressed closer, clinging to me as if it were mere coincidence. I forced myself to ignore him, but Mike wasn't one to back down easily. "Look who it is," he sneered as I put the bar down. "The family hero, and how's the victimhood life treating you?" I took a deep breath, remaining silent. I switched equipment, but he followed. "All right, you're going to keep quiet? Go on. You think you're so righteous, but we both know who the true loser is here." I gritted my teeth, mentally repeating, "Don't react. He wants to provoke you." But then he said the thing that shattered me. "You couldn't even hold on to your own woman," he mocked, moving closer. "Sarah deserved better and she got it. You should thank me for saving her from you." I clenched my fists, turning to him, my voice a low growl. "You hear me? This gym isn't yours. This life isn't yours. Get out." But Mike only smirked, leaning in. "And what are you going to do? Hide behind your lawyers?" I tried to pull away, but he shoved me from behind. That was the final straw. I instinctively lashed out, throwing a punch. I didn't truly want to fight, but rage consumed me. We began brawling right there in the middle of the gym, people screaming for us to stop. Mike retaliated, but I landed another blow. Eventually, gym staff managed to separate us. I was bleeding from my eyebrow, and my shoulder throbbed where it hit the bench. Mike, still sporting that infuriating smirk, wiped blood from his mouth. "You'll regret this," he said, staring at me. The next day, I received a notification. Mike had filed a lawsuit against me, accusing me of assault. It was so predictable I wasn't even surprised. His lawyer called mine, demanding compensation for physical and emotional damages. I looked at the bruise on my shoulder, a painful reminder of just how far things had deteriorated. That incident made it crystal clear. Mike wasn't going to stop. He was determined to destroy me, no matter the cost. The gym fight was the final nail in the coffin. It was apparent that my family, especially Mike, would never change. I'd tired of trying to salvage any semblance of a healthy relationship. I made a decision. I was going to leave everything behind and start anew. I was moving to Seattle. It wasn't an easy choice. Leaving meant severing ties not only with Mike and my parents, but with the life I'd built, even the good parts. Days were spent separating my belongings, selling or donating almost everything. As I closed the last box, it felt as if I was shedding the weight of years of pain and disappointment. Locking the apartment door for the final time brought a bittersweet mixture of relief and sadness. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. After announcing my move, something unexpected happened. Sarah's sister Emma reached out to me. "I'm sorry for everything my sister did to you." Her first message read, "I never expected anyone from Sarah's family to stand by me, but Emma proved to be an ally. We talked and she apologized profusely for Sarah's actions, saying she was even shocked by what transpired. She admitted Sarah had made a terrible mistake, but Mike had manipulated her, exploiting every insecurity she harbored. She had even offered to help me with the move, but I politely declined. I needed to handle it independently. To my surprise, Sarah's parents also wrote to me, a heartfelt letter expressing their shock and sorrow at what had transpired. They wrote that they couldn't justify her actions, yet they had always considered me a man of character and deeply lamented the pain it had caused me. Their words were unexpected yet comforting. For the first time in a long while, I felt that not everyone around me was intent on bringing me down. My cousin Amy also entered the fray. Having grown up witnessing my parents' unwavering support of Mike, she had never shied away from speaking truth to power. This was bound to happen sooner or later, she wrote on social media. Years of favoritism and enabling had created a monster. Amy's public post caused several relatives to change their opinions. She became my voice in places where I lacked the strength to speak up. Her support meant more than she could imagine. Then came the most unexpected turn of events. Sarah herself sent me a message. Long and detailed, it began with, "I know you probably hate me, but I need to apologize." She admitted that Mike had manipulated her insecurities, exploiting the doubts she already harbored. He had consistently been there, telling her he understood her like no one else, until he'd convinced her that I didn't value her. "I was weak and foolish," she wrote. "I know I destroyed everything, and I have no excuse." She ended by hoping I'd find happiness, even if it wasn't with her. I stared at the message for a considerable time. A sense of relief, a feeling of closure washed over me, but I also knew those words couldn't erase the damage. My reply was brief. "I wish you the best, but I can't have any further connection with you." Severing ties with my family was the hardest decision of my life. I spent weeks wrestling with it, recalling childhood memories, moments when we truly seemed like a family unit. But every time I thought about what had happened in the previous months, them supporting Mike while ignoring my pain, appearing at my workplace, I knew there was no other option. Breaking these bonds was like undergoing a surgery without anesthesia, excruciatingly painful yet necessary. I stopped responding to messages, blocked numbers, and even deleted old photos to avoid waking up in the middle of the night, consumed by bitterness. This was my way of reclaiming control of my life. Seattle became my refuge. I found a small, cozy apartment with large windows overlooking a quiet park. It was everything I needed to rebuild myself. In my new job, I met people who knew nothing of my past, nothing of the turmoil I had left behind. Their kindness and genuine interactions reminded me that not every relationship comes with demands or manipulation. Gradually, I began to trust again, and even started attending company events, something I'd previously avoided like the plague. It felt good to be part of a group where no one judged me or compared me to anyone else. One day, while walking through the city, I passed an animal shelter. I don't know what prompted me to go inside, but something drew me in. There I met Max, a large, somewhat clumsy Labrador with tousled fur and eyes so expressive they melted my heart. When he approached me, wagging his tail and settling at my feet, I knew. Max became my haven during difficult times. When memories of family or Sarah surfaced, he was there, wagging his tail, nudging my hand, seeking affection, or cuddling in my lap. Simplicity could be happiness, and healing was possible. Through it all, I understood something crucial. Family isn't defined by blood. It's about those who respect, support, and value you for who you are, not what you can do for them. Therapy helped me shed the guilt and insecurity that had weighed me down for so long. I stopped blaming myself for my parents' favoritism or Mike's behavior. Their actions were never my responsibility, and I didn't need to carry that burden anymore. I also learned to set boundaries and prioritize my well-being. Stepping away from toxic relationships wasn't easy, but it was the only path to true peace. Looking back, I have no regrets. Severing ties with my family was painful, but it was also the most liberating decision of my life. Building a new life surrounded by good things and people who truly care has brought immense joy. On weekends, Max and I explore the trails around Seattle, and I've rediscovered a joy I hadn't experienced in years. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine, and that's what truly matters.